Biliyor musun? Erken rezervasyon başladı. Yazın en renkli fırsatları cyprusparadise.com'da. %40, %50 hatta %60'a varan kaçırılmaz indirimler. Erken rezervasyon yap, uçak bileti fiyatına paket tatili al. Uygun fiyata Kıbrıs tatilinin adresi cyprusparadise.com. Zaman akıp gitmeden acele edin. Bir bakmışsınız yaz gelmiş. Cyprus Paradise. Tatiliniz bizimle güvende.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeni ürünler ile hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Yeni model koltuk takımlarımız, yatak mekanizmaları bir dokunuş ile açılıp bir dokunuş ile kapanabilmektedir. Bir dokunuş ile açtığımız yatak mekanizmasının yatak çarşafı kullanıma hazır serili olarak içinden çıkmaktadır. Yıl sonuna kadar herhangi bir koltuk takımı alan her müşterimize akıllı sehpa hediyemizdir. En iyi ürün, en iyi fiyat sadece Ancon Furniture'da. Bize uğramadan karar vermeyin. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok.
Welcome to the latest printed press. And yet again tonight we are covering a very important subject, COVID-19 and the vaccine. And this is a joint initiative with the TCCA, and we will be doing the same program on the same subject in Turkish on Tuesday. So without much further ado, I'm going to be introducing our guests. We have Dr. Mekella Mehmet, Yesil, public health researcher on our program tonight. We've got Dr. Fulya Yahioglu, Senior Public Health Commissioner, Dr. Peter Christian, Board Member for Haringey, North Central London Clinical Commissioning Group, NCL-CCG, and finally Mortty, who is the Deputy Head of Medicines Management Haringey, North Central London Clinical Commissioning Group, NCL-CCG. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming on my program. What a commendable group of people. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to inform our community on COVID-19 and the vaccine. First of all, what I'd like is for all of us to introduce yourselves to our audiences, just so that they get a little bit of a better understanding of your backgrounds. If we could start with Mekella. To just introduce, I know you've been on the program many times, but just for the sake of tonight.
Okay, well, obviously I'm the CEO of Community Health Screen UK. I was a researcher for public health, and obviously I participated as an ambassador for cervical cancer awareness, and now obviously been appointed ambassador for the COVID research vaccine group for the Turkish community. So my background is medicine and obviously research.
Yes, and congratulations on the fact that you are now officially the vaccine ambassador for the TCCA, which we will go into further detail a bit later on in the program. But that's brilliant, because I think you're going to be really informing and helping our community immensely with clarification on the vaccine. So thank you very much for taking that on, Mekella. I know you're very, very busy, so yet another thing that you're going to have to do, but thank you very much. It's you tirelessly, supporting our community. Dr. Fulya Yahioglu, welcome again to my program. It's always such an honor to have you here. Could you just give us a little bit of a background, please, as well, for our audience?
Sure. Yeah, for those that don't know me, I'm a senior public health commissioner within the London Borough of Enfield. I commission services for sexual health, substance misuse, for long-acting reversible contraception with GPs, as well as hormonal contraception with pharmacists. I come from a background of health. I've been in the health sector for over 18 years, and I also have a PhD in pharmaceutical chemistry. I used to be a former scientist working at the Royal London Hospital. So that's where my kind of clinical stroke scientific background comes from, as well as health.
Yes, thank you very much. Really a vast experience and knowledge, for our program. Thank you very much. Dr. Peter Christian, if you could just briefly introduce yourself as well. Thank you very much again for coming on my program, for taking time out. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. I started my life in psychology, actually, before I then went on to train as a doctor. And for the past 35 years, I've been a GP in Haringey, and I live in Haringey. And for the past 10 years, I've been a health commissioner. I ended up being the chair of Haringey Clinical Commissioning Group, which commissioned all the secondary care, the hospital care for the people of Haringey. And then, as many of you are probably aware, the CCGs have merged into one big one now for North Central London. And I sit on the board of that and represent the people of Haringey along with a colleague. It's a delight to be here this evening.
Thank you very much. Like I said, it's great for us to be able to have all of you on our programme to inform our community. And Effa Mortty, again, Deputy Head of Medicines Management in Haringey, welcome to my programme. Thank you very much for coming on. Like I said, you're all very busy people, especially in these times, so I really appreciate it. If you could just give us a bit of a background to yourselves as well.
Okay, I've been a pharmacist for 30 years. And my first 10 years was in hospital pharmacy. I did work as a clinical trials pharmacist in oncology. I then moved into primary care, and I've been working in Haringey Clinical Commissioning Group for the last 20 years. I've been supporting GPs in prescribing, giving them prescribing advice, and then working with the local hospitals for doing interface work to make sure that patients are kept safe in Haringey.
Wow, really long service in Haringey. Thank you very much. 20 years. It's like my teaching career. I've been in Haringey for 20 years. I think Haringey is one of those boroughs, isn't it? Once you're there, you just can't leave. I think there's so much to do. So thank you very much. Peter, my first question is going to come to you. Can you briefly tell us about the virus, its strains, and what to expect from it in the future?
Yes, okay. So as I was saying before the program started, I'm not really a virologist, a virus expert, but I can just maybe tell the audience, but I'm sure perhaps a lot of people are aware that infections, broadly speaking, are caused by either viruses or bacteria. And I think many people think that perhaps viruses are not as serious as bacteria, but they certainly are, as is evidenced by the current pandemic that we're in now. And the coronavirus is a large virus family. There are different groups of virus, the adenovirus, Coxsackie virus, and so forth. And these viruses, one of the things that make them so difficult is that they replicate and they can change themselves. Bacteria can do that to a degree as well, which is why we're worried about antibiotic resistance. But viruses are particularly clever at doing this. And what we can't predict really in healthcare is quite how the change might happen. You might find a virus changes to something that's fairly innocuous, that only gives you very mild symptoms, as is evidenced by colds that we get in the winter. Or they can change into something very, very serious indeed, which is, of course, what we're experiencing at the moment. And so no sooner have we got used to this new virus, this COVID-19 virus, but it's already started to change, as many of you have appreciated, reading the papers and so forth. And I would defer very much to my public health colleagues here, probably more knowledgeable than I, but we're already seeing variants. And you've probably heard of the South African variant, and one which I think very unfairly is being called the British variant. I think we were so clever and we're so well advanced that we were just the first to identify it, I think. But I hope it's not going to be forever around the world seen as our virus. And so we're already having to accommodate to this virus changing itself. And I think, as I've been saying in meetings with EFA, I think although we can't be entirely sure, I think we're already thinking that we will have to bring out booster vaccinations, which will have to keep on being tweaked as we learn, as we follow this virus as it twists and changes.
Okay, very interesting. Fulya, what are vaccines? I mean, you know, there's been a huge debate within our community in the last few days about the vaccine. So I think it's quite, relevant question to ask. What are vaccines and how effective are they against COVID-19? Because I think what the public are worried about is, like Dr. Peter has just talked about, is the fact that the virus can change, it can mutate. And I think people are concerned whether, you know, the vaccines are going to be effective against COVID-19. So I know you've answered this question many a time on my program, but once again, for our audience, could you answer this question, please?
Yeah, sure. Vaccines have been around for a good few centuries, as we know from Dr. Edward Jenner around smallpox and the milkmaid story, where it's sort of getting the pus from the milkmaids. It's a kind of a notice that they weren't getting smallpox, so used the pus from that to give to a young boy, and then realized that he was immune to smallpox. So from that, it went on to cholera, and then it went on to the new kind of vaccines against diphtheria, typhoid. We've got vaccines when we need to travel to South Asian countries, hepatitis B, diphtheria, cholera, etc. So there's a whole host of vaccines that we've used before. People have used it, MMR. I mean, we give to children, etc. So vaccines are a virus or a bacteria that causes an immune reaction. Sorry, let me start that again. Vaccines are used to produce an immune reaction. So they can be either a dead virus or a kind of a modified virus, or they could be a live virus that you can inject in somebody and get an immune response. Now, vaccines, as I said, have been around for centuries. I think the new vaccines have come on board in the last few years because of molecular biology and genetic engineering. Currently, we know there's about 270 vaccine candidates being developed for COVID. At the moment, because the fact that COVID has impacted on the economy, on our health mainly, we've lost thousands and thousands of people and millions across the world. There's been a real global effort to try and get vaccines onto the market. I mean, it's funding. There's been lots of clinical work going on. There's been lots of collaboration going on to try and ensure that a vaccine is available. And what we've got currently in the UK, we've got 3 different vaccines, 2 already in operation, which have been approved by the Medicines Health and Regulatory Authority. These are the Pfizer-BioNTech, Oxford AstraZeneca, and the Moderna virus. Now, Moderna hasn't come into operation yet. It won't do until spring of this year, although doses have been bought by the government. And there are also 2 other further vaccines, the Novavax from US and Janssen from Johnson & Johnson in the Netherlands, which are pending approval at the moment. But again, they will be around, and they've been bought by the UK government, X number of doses to give the vaccine to our population. Now, the vaccines are pretty much similar in how they work. Again, they use the what we call the outer crown of the coronavirus, which has a spike protein, the S protein. And they can either be used via a viral vector through the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is using a chimpanzee adenovirus or a chimpanzee cold virus. Now, the reason why they've used a cold virus from chimpanzees is because that will give us a response, an immune response, where our antibodies, our T cells will create, you'll get an immune reaction, your T cells will start working, and then you'll get your antibodies and your killer T cells, and you'll get your macrophages coming in to kill the virus. We wouldn't be able to use a normal cold virus because we already had several bouts of cold viruses, and we wouldn't get the immune response that we would want. So basically, they've used a chimpanzee virus to use as a vector or an envelope. They've put the genetic material in, and then that gives us the protein, which will elicit an immune response. Now, with the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, it's slightly different, but again, it's using the spike protein, the RNA. RNA is ribonucleotide acid. It's the building block of proteins. So basically, you're using the genetic material from the spike protein, and you're using that to elicit an immune response. So both the Moderna and the Pfizer BioNTech work in a similar way. Now, the vaccines are pretty similar in how they're effective. Their efficacy rate is around 95% for both Pfizer and Moderna. For preventing mild and severe symptoms of COVID-19. The AstraZeneca has similar effectiveness in the severity of disease. And I know there's been a lot of talk around the older age group, and should we give the AstraZeneca virus to the older group? But that's been endorsed by SAGE, WHO SAGE, that it can be safe and used in older adults. So we've got 3 good vaccines on the market at the moment, which can be used. 2 are already being used and being rolled out across Haringey, Enfield, etc. And then if we look at the kind of the emerging mutations, which Peter kind of mentioned, we've got the South African variant, and we've got the Kent variant, or the English variant. The Kent variant is the variant of concern, which is the predominant kind of mutation that's around in the UK. It's about 99% at the moment. And it's got a high transmissibility rate. So it's very infectious. So it's about 70% infection rate, 50 to 70% infection rate. And we know that these vaccines, they've been proven to work against these vaccines. They've been proven to work against these mutations. What we don't know is that at the moment, in terms of how they prevent the virus from infecting an individual or spreading from one per the transmissibility we don't know about. But then there's lots of studies at the moment. And I think the Pfizer one, there's some promising studies about transmissibility and reduction of transmissibility. But all the vaccines work in pretty much the same way. And we're pretty sure that they're going to be working against the new variants. At the moment, the South African variant, there's a few cases around, and I know there's been some work around door-to-door kind of testing within Haringey and Broxbourne and other areas. But at the moment, the main concern is around the Kent variant, which, again, we know from studies that all 3 of the vaccines will have an effect against that. So there's no need to worry about that at the moment. They will work. And the thing with these genetically modified vaccines is that they can be mass produced very quickly and changed according to. So whether there's a change in the protein of the coat, we can quickly adapt those vaccines and produce those vaccines to have a booster dose, as Dr. Peter Christian has said.
That's actually quite promising, actually, because I didn't even think about that, to have a booster vaccination. So the fact that that's possible is good news, really. So it's all good news. Effa, thank you very much again for coming on the programme. And my first question to you is, how is the UK distribution of the vaccine going, and what locations are being used to distribute the vaccine?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. So what's happening is you know that we have priority groups for giving the vaccines to. So they're making sure that each area is getting enough vaccine to make sure those priority groups all get vaccinated. We started with above 80-year-olds, above the 70s, and then now we're doing above 65s and vulnerable people. we're making sure that each borough gets enough vaccines to vaccinate these people so that there's a balance across the country. When the vaccines were approved, the first one was the Pfizer vaccine, and that's a very fragile vaccine. It has to be stored at -70 degrees C, and once it's thawed, it only has a 5-day expiry, and it comes out in batches of 1,000. So in December, when they started distributing that, it had to go to large centres that would guarantee that they would get 1,000 people to vaccinate. So that was just the hospitals and the vaccination centres, like the PCN, groups of GPs grouped together who could get their patients in. But since then, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is less fragile and can be stored as you would store the flu vaccine, that's been released as well. And therefore, we can give that to smaller centres, and also it could be taken into care homes, and that's where the care home patients were vaccinated. So since then, although we have the large centres like the hospitals and then groups of GPs who've come together and we're vaccinating a large number of people there, mainly the Pfizer vaccines going there. We've also now started distributing it to pharmacies across the country who applied and assured us that they could, safely vaccinate people whilst they're practicing social distancing. So they've been approved and they get their vaccines. Now, there's now a national booking system, and if you fall into the first 4 criteria, so that's the 65 and above and the vulnerable patients, you can book online to go and get your vaccine, and that would probably be at one of the pharmacy sites or any site that is on the national booking system. Some GPs are also vaccinating people, and they will call you in and you can go for your vaccine then, and they will call you back for your next vaccination. So far it's going quite well. We can't, some of the centres are getting vaccines enough to only vaccinate people over 3 days. So people have to be patient and wait to be called by their GP, but otherwise, if they want to be vaccinated sooner and they fall into the first 4 criteria, they can go online and book their vaccination via the NHS website. You would need to have your NHS number and your name and details to enter the site, and it will take you through the process.
Yes, that's really good to know, actually. I think that's really valid information to give to our community and our viewers tonight. The fact that if they are over 60, they can just automatically book it in. I mean, I'm a key worker. I'm actually getting the vaccination tomorrow, and it was my GP contacted me directly and first gave me the option to go in and book. Then I had to choose which centre I could go to, and then once I booked it, I was given details, and then again today I was sent a reminder. So it seems to be working very well. It seems to be very organised, and obviously it's great news that pharmacies have now got the permission to be able to do it as well. So hopefully that will speed things along really on a national level, and we'll be able to get through much quicker, not just in Haringey, but in all boroughs. Hopefully they will follow suit and do that. That's some really great news, to be honest with you. And I think, like I said, I'll just repeat that to our viewers. If you are over 60, you can log on. You just need your NHS number, I'm presuming your date of birth, and if you know what GP you're assigned to. I'm assuming that's the only information you need to be able to book online?
Yes, and you will be, you can choose your vaccination centre, and if you have accessibility issues as well, you can choose a centre that would suit you. I must say also that if you have been phoned by your GP or the NHS and invited for a vaccine, and at the time you weren't quite sure you wanted it, so you turned it down, you can still go back. You can phone your GP, or you can go online and book, or you can actually dial 119, and if you don't have access to a computer, and they will do the booking process for you.
Fantastic. We're getting lots of comments in, but I'm going to ask Meg, who's been waiting patiently, one other question, and then I think we're going to get some viewers to get some of their questions answered, because I think we're getting them coming in quite quick and fast. Meg, just one first question before we go on to what our viewers want to ask. Why has there been a decision made to create the role of vaccine ambassador?
Right, the reason being behind it is we know that with the studies going on at the moment, there's been a downfall of Turkish Kurdish people within our community not getting vaccinated. Because you know, when you fill in the forms and people getting vaccinated, there's only been like a 2.5% of Turkish people going forward and getting the vaccine. So there's a lot of scaremongering going on certain social media platforms, and we want to put an end to that. So what we've done is we're working very closely with Help Watch Haringey and with the Quality Care Commission, obviously, who are running this programme. And what we want to do is to encourage people to come into the clinic, to the doctor's surgeries, to the hospitals to get their vaccination, because obviously it's quite tormenting to know that we've been in this pandemic for nearly enough a year now, and we've got a way out, and people are still refusing to have the vaccine. So we need to debunk and destroy any myths out there about any controversy surrounding the efficacy of the vaccine, whether it be the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca Oxford. We need to sort of like get more people to come in and sort of get vaccinated so that they are protected. If we don't get protected, we can't go back to a normal way of life. And people are always moaning that, you know, things have changed drastically in the last year, and mental health is going to be a big issue.
Yes, it will be. I think it's affecting a lot of us, and I think people do need to bear that in mind. And the fact is that COVID-19 can kill you, but not the vaccine, really.
Which background you're from, it doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate. The virus does not discriminate. I mean, I've seen people, I don't even want to go into it too much in great detail because I don't want to scare people, but it's quite a virus, a vicious disease, because I've seen people come into hospital and within a few hours, you know, they've passed away. And this is like a young, healthy 30-year-old. So it's not looking good if we don't get vaccinated.
Yes, definitely. So that's the strong message tonight. We've got lots of comments coming in. I mean, Osman has put, thank you for making this information accessible to members of our community. Aisha Ismail has said, good evening, everyone. Thank you for such an informative show. Mehdi Ismail, all the way from Cyprus, is watching. And he has said North Cyprus had 40,000 vaccines, which is great news. Arrived today. Good to hear professionals' advice and facts. Fevzi Bay has written, good panel lineup. I am really worried with the narrative in the media around BAME communities not taking vaccine in some numbers as non-BAME communities. I know many white people who are not taking vaccines, but the narrative in the media does not cover this and implies that the BAME are ignorant. There is a deep distrust of the Tory government, and whilst I personally am probably going to take the vaccine, I understand why some people from the BAME community are worried. Who wants to respond to that one? Okay, Peter.
Well, I mean, Efra and I are really passionate about this because we are only too fully aware in Haringey about the disparity between the uptake of the vaccine in different parts of the community, particularly the Black and the ethnic minority community. And I have to say, I'm really sorry, but I find it personally very distressing. I find it really distressing that there are people out there who could gain protection from this dreadful virus that, as we know, can be lethal, you know. And Effa and I and our colleagues, we're doing everything we can think of is to try and get out. That's why I'm more than happy to come out and speak to any group and answer their questions and to listen to their fears and anxieties, because we are passionate about this. We really are, and it's just dreadful. We don't completely understand why this section of the community are more vulnerable to this virus. It is more dangerous to them, and that's why we're so passionate about getting out, because we want to protect them. You know, we know that the deaths are much higher, you know, in these communities than they are in the community I've worked in over in Muswell Hill, where the number of deaths from the COVID virus is far, far lower. So we, you know, whatever we can do to get this message across, I can't emphasize this enough. We understand some of the themes around this: the distrust of government, the false news. David Lammy, our MP, has been fantastic. I've known David for some years, and he's really out there and trying to get the message across to the Black community about, you know, the vaccine and so forth. So we are, all of us, trying everything we can think of to get this message over.
Yes, and what I say to our audiences now is, please, there's been a lot of comments on Facebook in the last couple of days. Log on to this program. If you are watching, please ask your questions now. Now is the time to ask your questions. If you want to ask a controversial question, ask it, because we've got the experts on my program right now. I think now is the time. Any doubts that you have, any article that you've read, anything like that, I implore you as a community, please put your questions down now, because in the last couple of days, I have been extremely distressed with some of the things that have been going around social media. And I, for one, am for the vaccine, and I'm personally getting the vaccine tomorrow. I'm going to film it so I actually have proof of the fact that I've gotten the vaccine, so that people can use that if they so wish. I think the TCCA are doing an information video, and I think it's very, very important. My parents have had it, my husband's parents have had it. I am for it. I think we do need to take this vaccine to get some sort of normality back into our lives and to bring this virus down. And this is somebody coming from a non-scientific background. Honestly, I'm really worried. I mean, Edin Meto has put, thanks to all who are participating, really important and informative program, Turkish show on Tuesday. So he's just letting us know. Fulya, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just wanted to say, yeah, that there has been a high number of deaths within the Turkish and Greek communities. I mean, we've had over 300 deaths within the Turkish and Turkish Cypriot communities. And it is incredibly distressing to know that these could have been prevented, but also, you know, people are refusing the vaccine. I mean, the vaccine is to offer you protection, but also to offer protection to others as well, which is the crucial thing that people need to understand. You know, no one is forcing you to have the vaccine. It's not mandatory, but in terms of what it can do, I mean, there are people who will not be able to have the vaccine, and we've got to think of those people to make sure that they're protected. I mean, what we're hearing is that people are stopping their parents, elderly parents, who are at extreme risk. Because we know within our communities, we've got people who've got long-term conditions, diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, COPD, thalassemia. I mean, it's just, we know they're vulnerable, and we definitely need to let people know that these vaccines will protect from severe disease. It may not stop transmission, but it will protect them from severe disease and hospitalization and death. This is what we need to get across. You know, it's a personal choice, but I think for our elderly and the most clinically vulnerable, we do need to vaccinate. And that's, I would implore people to rethink again.
Yeah.
Yes. We've got some more questions coming in. I'm just going to go through some of the comments very quickly, just so we can get some of our audience questions, and then we're going to go back to our own questions. Yusuf Ahmed has put, exceptional lineup, really grateful for this show, well done. Febsi has put, does anyone on the panel have a view on vaccine nationalism?
Vaccine nationalism.
I think, is that so that everybody has to have a vaccine? Is it something like a vaccine passport, maybe he's trying to say?
Well,
I mean, like Peter, I would say no. I think it is not mandatory, but we can see in the future that if you need to travel, and it won't be us imposing, but it could be other countries, and then it's about how safe you feel going over to countries which haven't been as widely vaccinated as the UK. So I can't see it being imposed, but we don't know. We don't know.
If I can say, you know, the word community has cropped up frequently this evening, and I'm looking at my public health colleagues. You know, what we do as a community is we all decide to do something, not just to protect ourselves, but to protect the whole community. So around the time when there was all the controversy about the MMR vaccine, I had both my children vaccinated for two reasons. One is that the evidence was overwhelming that it would help protect them from those horrible, serious diseases. But also, in having them vaccinated, I would help protect other children who are too young to be vaccinated.
Absolutely.
I think this concept of community, you know, we're in a community this evening, you know, and this is where we all band together to look after one another. And I think that's such an important message.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Eva, before we go back to the questions, we've got a lot of questions from our audience, but I want to ask Eva this before we carry on. If you test positive with COVID, what should you do?
So if you test positive with COVID, first and foremost, your details will be with the NHS test and trace, and they will be in touch with you quite regularly to see how you're getting on. If your symptoms are getting really bad, you should contact 111 and they would advise you what to do. Now, also, if you get vaccinated and around that time you have symptoms of COVID, you need to go and get tested. Because the thing is, once you get vaccinated, you're only protected about 2 weeks after you've been vaccinated. So if you contracted COVID around that time, you can still suffer and have severe symptoms from it. So also, if you've had your vaccine, you have symptoms, go get tested and just follow the protocols. Also, after you've been vaccinated, it's extremely important to continue to protect yourself and follow the government guidelines of, you know, that we're going through right now, because again, you know, we don't know if you can still transmit it. You're not protected for quite some time. And even if you do get protection and you do get in contact with the virus, you could transmit it to somebody else who's vulnerable. So it's very important to maintain those protocols following vaccination and even following the second dose as well.
Yes, definitely. Very good, valid points there. We've got to be responsible, not just for ourselves, but our community. And, you know, when we are out and about doing essential things, we must protect other people as well as ourselves. And I didn't know the fact that it takes 2 weeks for the vaccine to take effect. So that's a very good point. So you can actually get the virus in between. That's a really good, valid point. Thank you very much for clarifying that for us. Suleiman Tuzan has put, my mum and dad did the first vaccination in front of TV cameras. Wow, that's amazing. In December the 14th, East London. When will they receive the second dose? Biotech Pfizer. Would you be able to? When did they get
that will be before 12 weeks. So by the 11th week, they will be called to have the second dose.
So it's about 11 weeks, is it? Is that the same?
Between 11, yeah, because it's been extended so that we can give protection to more people as quickly as possible, and that's why they've extended the length between the vaccines. So they will get their second dose just before 12 weeks.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Mekella has put, amazing lineup. Thank you for this very informative show. Indeed, yes, a very good lineup. I'm very honoured to have all of you guys on my programme. Fevzi has put, the success of the vaccine rollout is down to our brilliant NHS and local authorities. Enfield and Haringey have been brilliant. So yes, definitely. Christopher's put, there is a lot of scaremongering happening online, particularly in Cypriot groups advising people not to take the vaccine. This puts the clinically extremely vulnerable at risk. What can we do specifically within the Cypriot community to dispel these myths and ultimately save lives? Mek, the ambassador, any advice?
But we're in the process of obviously doing a campaign at the moment. We're running up some leaflets. Obviously, we're getting the clearance from Haringey Health Watch anyway. We've already shared some stuff on our Facebook platform today, where we've got a Turkish-speaking doctor who works at North Middlesex talking about getting vaccinated. So we've done that. And obviously, we're looking at getting the TCCA as a vaccination centre through the NHS and hopefully encouraging Turkish Kurdish communities to come forward to be vaccinated. So that's how we're sort of dealing with that side of things. In response to other things I was just going to point out, there was a thing that came up this morning through a message for me. Whittington Health Authority had some leftover vaccines today and yesterday, and what they were doing was anybody who was going in for like random blood tests or checkups, because they had some vaccinations left over, they were asking people if they wanted to be vaccinated. And what I was going to ask was, if people are going to North Middlesex or to any sort of like clinic or anywhere where they've got clinically vulnerable or elderly people, if they want to be vaccinated themselves, to take up take up on the vaccine if they can, basically.
Yes, definitely. That's, I think, very useful. Big Cassius, but can anyone test positive for COVID-19 after getting the vaccine? I think Eva sort of covered that, didn't you? But I don't know if you want to elaborate anything more to that point.
Yeah, because you know, at the time of vaccination, you wouldn't have had antibodies. So if you contracted, if you got in touch, if you were in touch with anybody who had the coronavirus, you know, you would have contracted it as well, and therefore you wouldn't have been protected. So it can happen. You know, some people say, oh, the vaccine gave me COVID, and that's not possible because it has no live vaccine, no live virus in it. But if you do contract COVID around that time, you just have to follow the protocols, stay at home, isolate, monitor your symptoms, get in touch with 111 if they get worse, and follow the advice that you're given.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much for clarifying that further. Leading on from what Mekella said, Peter, I'd like to ask you something before we go back to the comments. Is there any plans, do you know, to base a vaccine centre at a community hub which will elevate trust issues? Because this seems to be quite a big issue for our community, to allow for the availability of Turkish-speaking staff and access other information and services. Is there a plan for anything like that?
Well, we've certainly been discussing this because, again, it's not lost on us about the various themes that might be putting people off. And I know many GPs in Haringey are very keen and anxious to get some supplies of the vaccine to keep in their own surgeries, because we know of some patients who would be happy to go to their own GP surgery, but wouldn't be happy to go to one of the bigger hubs, you know. And I think, as ever, you know, we're thinking about this. It's all, as ever, it's a trade-off between having to staff and these centres, and to make sure that they have the supplies, the administrative staff, and the logistics around it. And so it's a tricky one, this, and we're reviewing it day by day. But I've certainly been pushing, you know, and I think everybody has, for centres close to where people are. You know, this is the important thing, especially with people not going to their usual places of work and so forth, is to make sure that we have places close to where people actually are.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much for all the work that you are doing in the community. You can tell how much passion you have for it. You know, you're giving up your time, even after work, to, you know, come on to programs and inform. And you said that you would do anything to, you know, help communities be better informed. So I thank you. Thank goodness we have people like yourselves in our community. Zara Yilmaz has put, great lineup for this show. It's really important that our community realise that the vaccines have undergone vigorous approval processes. The MHRA, who has approved vaccines, wouldn't approve these vaccines if they weren't safe. We need to trust the doctors, scientists and professors who have years of experience behind them, medicine and medical research. A very valid point. Gilnil has asked the question, I have heard that some blood groups are less likely to get COVID. I've read up on this as well. Is this true? And which blood groups are they? Is it worth getting tested to find out our blood groups? Fulya, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've read that as well. I don't know if that's verified academically, but there's been some questions around different blood types, and I can honestly say that, I mean, I've colleagues who, you know, one of my colleagues, her husband had the COVID virus. She went and got tested. You know, they live in the same house, sleep together. No, she never caught. She was negative throughout. So we're wondering if it is the blood type. I think Mekella would know. Blood type O?
The blood type O, that's correct, yeah.
That's what they're saying. We don't know why. I don't think there's enough academic research to actually verify that. But
no.
Who knows? It's a bit like mosquito bites. Why do some people get bitten more than others?
Yeah, I mean, why is that? I mean, because the other thing is that obviously our community, certain communities have been affected, and there's no scientific evidence or research for that. Like, we don't know yet why that is.
No.
It's to do with the hemoglobin in the blood. It's the iron.
It might be. Yeah. Puzzling. I mean, there are so many more things to learn about this, I'm sure.
We're still learning.
Yeah, that we
absolutely
don't understand.
Right, I'm going through the questions. There's so many questions here. Right, Abi Hussein has put, Dr. Mekella has to be more blunt with the message to the Turkish community. If you refuse a vaccine, very likely it will kill you if you get infected.
Well, that's what I've said. I mean, it's true.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, like we've said, it's not something that we can force people to do.
No, not at all.
Everybody has a right to make their own choice, but we strongly advise them. Obviously, you can't be aggressively telling people to get the vaccine, but I hear his point. I think people are worried in our community. Those of us who are for the vaccine are very concerned because, like, you know, I've been doing these programs for over a year and I've heard the experts. I'm not a scientific expert in any shape or form. I knew nothing about vaccines, nothing about COVID-19 until I started to do these programs. But from hearing about it, you make an informed decision based on the facts. Right, based on the facts. Ertanç Bey has put Oxford vaccine is found to be more effective the longer one waits for the second dose. Is the same true for the Pfizer and biotech? I don't know who would like to answer that question.
So I will answer that.
Sorry, Emma.
So we have found out that you know, Oxford AstraZeneca have done the studies and it has shown that delaying it is beneficial. We haven't got that information from the Pfizer vaccine yet, but it looks like it might be a similar process with the Pfizer vaccine. I also just wanted to add that, you know, to encourage people to get vaccinated, it's better to be vaccinated and get an immune response from the vaccine than it is to wait and catch COVID and get an immune response from COVID. Because, you know, there's some people, although they've had mild symptoms, you know, many weeks later, they still tend to have symptoms from COVID. And then also people who were quite well before they had COVID, following having the COVID, they had long COVID afterwards, and their health has not returned back to how it was prior to them having COVID. So it is much better to have the vaccine than to wait and see how your own immune system will respond to it.
I would just add what Effa was saying. We're very worried in healthcare about long COVID. I mean, obviously we're worried about people getting seriously ill and dying, but I have patients over in Muswell Hill who weren't ill enough to be admitted, but they're still ill months later with chronic fatigue, loss of taste of smell and taste. Headaches, chest pains, shortness of breath. So, you know, this is not just a virus that either kills you or it doesn't. I'm afraid it has very unpleasant long-term effects, or can do.
Exactly. So please, audience, please, the community, please listen to these experts who've been in the field for many years and know what they're talking about. Honestly, please listen. Yusuf Ahmed has put another comment. Does taking the vaccine only protect yourself, or does it also prevent you spreading to others? I ask because I'm worried some people get the vaccine and then decide to ignore the social distancing measures and actually still spread the virus. We've covered this. I don't know if anyone wants to elaborate with that.
Well, I think what I would say is that the Pfizer BioNTech, they are doing some studies around transmissibility, and I think there is some good kind of outcomes that it does reduce transmissibility, but there's still work ongoing around that. But I think the best and safest thing is that even if you are vaccinated, as Effa has pointed out, that you still keep your social distance, you still work, you do everything that the guideline says to stop any further transmission, especially to those clinically vulnerable.
Definitely. Emine Osman has put, thank you so much. This topic is making me so upset, stressed, and also I feel sad. Well, it's true that our community are reluctant to have the vaccine, or indeed allowing others to make an informed choice. We all have a choice whether to have the vaccine or not, but we should not stop others doing so because of scaremongering and misinformation. I totally agree. And the TCCA Haringey have put, at TCCA, we are attempting to get accredited as a vaccine centre. We feel this would help alleviate potential mistrust, feel that it would allow dissemination of culturally sensitive material to those attending, allow support from staff who are Turkish speaking to provide support and for additional help if needed to be allocated. It has occurred with churches, community hubs, and needs to occur in key BAMER community establishments. I think this is directed at Peter. What do we think about that? I think we're in agreement, aren't you, really?
I love it. Seriously, anything we can do to encourage people to come forwards who've been reluctant before to have the vaccine is just gets my vote completely. But can I raise something else that hasn't yet appeared this evening? Is one of the things about the vaccination program predominantly was to relieve the huge pressure on the NHS. Our local hospitals are full of seriously ill people with COVID, and all the staff have been turned over to looking after those patients. We are holding back a huge backlog of work that needs to be done in the health service. There will be patients out there with cancer. There will be people waiting for their hip replacements, their knee replacements. And until we can get on top of this pandemic, we cannot get on with that work. And that's why we're watching desperately to see the admissions to intensive care units drop so that we can get back to what we call business as usual as soon as possible. And so the members of the community who are waiting for their, procedures and so forth, we're desperate to get on with that. But at the moment, until we can roll out this vaccination program, we can't.
Yes, that's a very, very valid point. And like you said, cancer patients are having to wait. They're not getting their treatment on time. This is a reality, a stark reality. So we need to, as a community, pull together and think about these things. Otherwise, we can't make a difference. Stephanie has put, my brother and sister-in-law had to get vaccinated. They both work for hospitals and they are fine. Yasmin has put, thank you to all. A great panel of information and knowledge to put the community at ease. Susanna, thank you for coming on and enlightening us with all your knowledge. It's reassuring to hear from you firsthand on this very important subject. The more professionals come on shows like this, the more we learn and the more confident people become. I'm all for the vaccine. The more people get the vaccine, the more immunity we have. Keep up the good work. So lots of positive comments coming through. Yashar has put, my mum is 86 and stroke victim for 25 years. Her grandchildren against. I'm 56, unsure what to do. Please advise.
Wow.
She's
She should have been called for a vaccine anyway. She should have been called for it.
Yes, I'm sorry. She should have been called for it, whether she's had a stroke or not. That's almost immaterial, really. In fact, it's even more pressing that she is vaccinated to protect her. After surviving a stroke, the last thing this poor lady needs is to contract the COVID virus. That's an absolute fact.
Yes,
I
would 56-year-old as well.
Yes,
because they can apply now, can't they? Online, they can actually book themselves in, I believe.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. Or to ring her practice and to say, that somehow she's not been called and to get it done. Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. So they're the questions. I mean, we were inundated there with questions, and thank you very much for answering all of them. But if we go back to our original sort of questions, if anyone needs further clarification, on the vaccine, its effects, support that may be needed, how would they be able to get that support? What should they do?
Are we talking just about the Turkish community at the moment? Because what I've done is I've set up a platform with Healthwatch Haringey. Anyone having the vaccine to contact me via my Facebook and basically telling me what symptoms they've had, what vaccine they've had, how long it will last. So basically a sore arm, a headache, migraine, a bit of dizziness, a bit of sickness, a bit of fatigue. Sometimes you might be well for a day or two, and people are actually actively reporting their symptoms back to me. So what I'm going to do in about a week's time, I'm going to collect all the information I'm getting from people, because I have shared information on the TCSA website, the Cyprus people abroad, the Cyprus people in London, on my own Facebook page, Instagram pages. So anyone who have any effects or side effects of any vaccine, whether it be Pfizer or Oxford AstraZeneca, to report it to me, and I've asked them to give me authority to share the information and their pictures if they have any. So usually within about a day or two of having the vaccine, they shouldn't last more than 72 hours, which is about 3 days. So anything beyond that, then we have to look into. And with the Pfizer vaccine, there is a special app. If they have a smartphone, it's called the Yellow Card. They need to download to their phone, and any adverse effects are reported within 24 hours. So obviously, breathing or respiratory, or not able to get up at all out of bed, things like that. But I have set up a platform for that, for people to contact me with any effects whatsoever.
Brilliant. Well, I'm having the vaccine tomorrow, so I will be.
You can let me know how you feel.
Definitely. I'm going to be documenting it as well. Actually, I'm going to be videoing the whole process.
Yeah. Take a picture of your card that you're going to be given as well, and then we can relay that back to the study that we're going to do hopefully in about 6 months' time. And I have asked for people to sort of give me their authority if they're happy for me to share their experiences on Public Health England site and stuff like that, or the Turkish community site. So I've asked people to forward the authority.
I mean, as we speak now, even I'm getting messages coming through, personal messages of people being distressed, travel restrictions changing on a daily basis. I mean, we all want to get out of this situation and go back to some sort of normality. So really, if you are given the opportunity to get the vaccination, I would say go for it, really. Obviously, no one can be forced, but, you utilize this panel, message Mekella, look at the TCCA's website, and find out the information and inform yourselves, because it's really, really important. We're in the last 4 minutes of the program, so I'm going to go around, and if you could just say your sort of final words, what messages you'd like to give to the audience. Effa, if we start with you and we work around.
Okay, I would say that if you've missed your call, come back, and I've told you, you can phone 119, or you can phone your GP, or you can go online and book. Also, I would love to say that please do not forward information you are not sure of, because that just causes a lot of anxiety in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on the program as well. Thank you. Peter.
Okay, I didn't get the chance to talk about a theme that Effa and I keep meeting again and again. It's people's anxiety about the speed at which the vaccines were developed and any potential unforeseen long-term effects. I can tell you that thanks to modern technology and huge resources being thrown into developing these vaccines, they were able to bring these to use in an amazingly short time using fabulous technology. And the long-term effects, 11 million doses have been given with 0.5%. I mean, the marked serious side effects are tiny, and every day I enter on my app the dates I had my vaccine, and every day I put any symptoms I've got, and that goes to King's College Hospital. There are about 10,000 of us doing this every day.
Oh, fantastic. It's brilliant research. Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for coming on my program. I mean, I do feel like I might need this lineup again. I think as we go through this, we might need you all back on here to, reassure our audiences again and again. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to repeat yourself, just to get the message through. Fulya, any lasting messages you'd like to give anybody for tonight?
Yeah, just to say, get the vaccine. I've had the vaccine. My parents have had the vaccine, both cancer sufferers. And just to say, to adhere to the guidelines, we have got the Kent variant of concern. It is more transmissible, more contagious. Wash your hands regularly for 15 seconds. Keep your distance, at least 1 meter, but preferably 2 meters. Don't mix with households. Follow the guidelines. Ventilate your house. And wear a mask. No chin huggers, please. We do not want to see your chins. We want your nose and mouth covered. So please adhere to the guidelines and look after yourselves. Vitamin D, other micronutrients. Just keep yourself well, safe. Eat well. do exercise, do all those things, mindfulness, meditation, whatever will help you relieve some of your anxiety. It is a difficult time. We are all under strain at the moment because we are in lockdown, but it's important that we keep to the guidelines, even whilst we've been vaccinated up until the second dose, because you will not acquire immunity straight away. It will take a few weeks, and it will be even more important that you take the second vaccine as a second dose, which is a booster dose, and at least 3 or 4 weeks after that, you'll acquire the full immunity. So please take the vaccine and adhere to the guidelines.
Thank you, Fulya, for not only just coming on my program, but sometimes even on social media. I ask for your help to clarify things. So thank you very much for all that you've done for our community. And Mekella, obviously, going to be taking the baton on, and you're going to be the vaccine ambassador. I really look forward to the informative video that you're going to be creating, and obviously the surgeries that you'll be holding, I'm sure, and the information that you'll be giving to our community. But any lasting words for tonight?
Well, I'm just going to brush up on what the doctors all said, and whatever said, and Dr. Christian and Dr. Fulya have said. Basically, just carry on doing what we've been doing, and get vaccinated. If you don't want to get vaccinated, then that's your individual choice. But just think about the people around you who you care about and you love and who you want to protect. It's not just about us. We shouldn't be selfish. It's about the other people in the community as well. And obviously, read a book or something. Stay away from social media sometimes.
Yeah.
I think so, definitely. I think, stay away from the scaremongers, I think. But it's been a joy to have such a professional lineup tonight. Thank you very much for taking time out from your busy schedules to come on our programme. That's it from us, from Yahioglu TV. I thank our viewers and for all the comments. And we keep it up, we keep going, and hopefully there'll be a lot of us in our community getting the vaccine. Like I said, I'm getting mine tomorrow, and we're also going to do this same programme in Turkish on Tuesday. So that's it from us. Have a good evening from Yahioglu TV.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Biliyor musun? Erken rezervasyon başladı. Yazın en renkli fırsatları cyprusparadise.com'da. %40, %50, hatta %60'a varan kaçırılmaz indirimler. Erken rezervasyon yap, uçak bileti fiyatına paket tatili al. Uygun fiyata Kıbrıs tatilinin adresi cyprusparadise.com. Zaman akıp gitmeden acele edin. Bir bakmışsınız yaz gelmiş. Cyprus Paradise. Tatiliniz bizimle güvende.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeni ürünler ile hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Yeni model koltuk takımlarımız, yatak mekanizmaları bir dokunuş ile açılıp bir dokunuş ile kapanabilmektedir. Bir dokunuş ile açtığımız yatak mekanizmasının yatak çarşafı kullanıma hazır, serili olarak içinden çıkmaktadır. Yıl sonuna kadar Herhangi bir koltuk takımı alan her müşterimize akıllı sehpa hediyemizdir. En iyi ürün, en iyi fiyat. Sadece Ancon Furniture'da. Bize uğramadan karar vermeyin. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok.